you break your own word, you break your confidence. And if you fix it, your life starts to change. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you said, "I'll do it tomorrow, I'll start next week," or "I'll get serious soon," and never did? You're not lazy. You're not lost. You're just tired of disappointing yourself, and that feeling sticks. This video is not about hacks, tricks, or quick wins. It's about something much deeper: the power of keeping promises to yourself. Because when you start following through, everything shifts. You stop doubting your ability. You stop needing motivation. You rebuild trust with yourself. If you've ever struggled with focus, confidence, or self-respect, this is your reset. This is where your change begins, not by doing more, but by honoring what you already said you'd do. Watch until the end. What you hear today might be the real reason you've been stuck, and the exact reason you finally move forward. Chapter 1. Keep promises to yourself to grow. Growth begins in a quiet place inside a person long before it shows up in results that others can see. It begins with the way a person treats their own word. A promise made to yourself may sound small, but it is the foundation of everything else you try to build. When a person keeps breaking their own promises, they slowly lose belief in themselves. Not all at once, but day by day, choice by choice. Confidence fades not because of failure, but because of self-neglect. Growth does not come from wanting more or knowing more. Growth comes from becoming someone who can be trusted, starting with trusting yourself. When you say you will wake up earlier and you do not, you send a message to your mind that your word has no weight. When you say you will read, learn, exercise, save, plan, or focus, and then you ignore it, you weaken the relationship you have with yourself. Humans live inside their own thoughts all day long. If the voice inside no longer believes what you say, then motivation disappears. Discipline becomes harder. Direction becomes unclear. Growth slows down because growth requires trust. You cannot grow if you do not believe yourself. Keeping promises to yourself is not about being perfect. It is about being honest. It is about choosing progress instead of comfort. Most people think growth requires dramatic change. It does not. Growth requires follow-through on small decisions. The small decision to keep your word builds inner strength. Inner strength creates momentum. Momentum creates results. Results change lives. A promise to yourself is a private contract. No applause follows when you honor it. No one may notice when you show up early, or stay focused, or finish the task you said you would. But something important happens inside you. You start to feel steady. You feel grounded. You feel capable. These feelings are not random. They are earned. They come from doing what you said you would do, even when no one was watching. People often wait for motivation to keep their promises. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. Growth depends on decisions, not feelings. A person who grows decides in advance and then acts even when the mood is missing. This is not harsh. It is respectful. It is a form of self-care that lasts longer than comfort. Comfort gives relief for a moment. Keeping promises gives strength for a lifetime. When you keep a promise to yourself, you create proof. Proof changes how the mind works. The mind begins to say, this person follows through. This person can be counted on. This person finishes. That inner belief becomes powerful. It affects how you approach challenges. You stop hesitating so much. You stop doubting every decision. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. Growth accelerates because belief fuels action. Many people feel stuck because they no longer trust themselves. They have ideas, plans, goals, dreams, but no follow-through. The gap between intention and action grows wider. Frustration builds. Shame creeps in quietly. Energy drops. This cycle can be broken in a simple way. Keep one small promise, then keep another. Growth does not require a complete overhaul of your life. It requires restoring trust step by step. The strongest people are not those who never fail. They are those who return to their word quickly. They adjust without quitting. They recommit without drama. They understand that growth is built through consistency, not intensity. Intensity burns out. Consistency builds character. Character shapes destiny. When you promise yourself to grow, you are really promising to pay attention. You are promising to notice how you spend your time, how you manage your energy, how you speak to yourself. Growth happens when awareness turns into action. Action becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. Identity determines the direction of your life. Self-respect is not something you think about. It is something you practice. Every kept promise strengthens self-respect. Every broken promise weakens it. This is not punishment. It is cause and effect. Humans respond to evidence. If you give yourself evidence that you show up, you will begin to feel worthy of bigger goals. If you give yourself evidence that you quit easily, you will start aiming lower, even if you do not realize it. Growth requires honesty about where you are and courage to move forward anyway. Keeping promises to yourself creates that courage. Courage is not loud. Courage is quiet and steady. It shows up in early mornings, completed tasks, focused hours, and finished days. Courage grows when you prove to yourself that you can rely on your own decisions. Some people search for confidence in books, courses, and advice. Confidence is built through action. Confidence grows when effort matches intention. Each time you do what you said you would do, you place a brick in the foundation of your future. That foundation supports better choices, better habits, and better results. Growth also requires patience. Trust is rebuilt slowly. If you have a long history of broken promises with yourself, do not rush. Start small. Choose promises that stretch you slightly, not promises that overwhelm you. Keep them simple and specific. Follow through, then repeat. Growth compounds. Small wins add up. Over time, you begin to feel stronger, more stable, and more focused. Keeping promises to yourself also changes how you interact with others. When you trust yourself, you communicate with clarity. You set boundaries without guilt. You stop overcommitting. You stop saying yes to please and no to your own growth. Personal growth is not selfish, it is responsible. When you grow, you bring more value to your work, your family, and your community. Growth is deeply personal. No one can do it for you. Advice can guide you, but action belongs to you. The moment you keep a promise to yourself, you step into responsibility. Responsibility brings freedom. Freedom comes from knowing you can handle your life. That knowledge is powerful. Life rewards people who follow through. Not immediately and not always publicly, but consistently. Opportunities come to those who are prepared. Preparation is built by daily discipline. Discipline is built by honoring commitments. Commitments begin with the ones you make to yourself. Growth also brings peace. When your actions match your intentions, your mind becomes calmer. There is less inner conflict, less self-criticism, less regret at the end of the day. Peace comes from alignment. Alignment happens when your words and actions agree. Keeping promises to yourself teaches resilience. Some days will be heavy. Some days progress will feel slow. On those days, showing up matters more than results. Growth is not measured only by outcomes, but by effort repeated over time. Each effort strengthens your ability to continue. A person who grows understands that success is built in private moments. Private choices shape public results. The discipline you practice alone determines the life you live openly. When you keep promises to yourself, you become your own support system. You stop waiting for encouragement. You create it through action. Growth is not reserved for the lucky or talented. It is available to those who decide to take themselves seriously. Taking yourself seriously means honoring your word. It means recognizing that your goals matter. Your time matters. Your effort matters. The future you want is built by the promises you keep today, not tomorrow, not someday, today. Growth begins with one decision followed by action. That action, repeated, becomes a way of life. Every kept promise strengthens your inner voice. That voice becomes calmer, more confident, and more encouraging. It stops arguing with you. It starts supporting you. That internal shift changes everything. Growth is a lifelong process. There is no finish line. There is only progress. Keeping promises to yourself ensures that progress continues even when circumstances change, even when challenges appear, even when motivation fades. A strong life is built by strong habits. Strong habits are built by small promises kept consistently. This is how ordinary people create extraordinary lives, not by luck or shortcuts, but by commitment. Honor your word to yourself. Grow into the person you know you can become, not through force, but through consistency, not through pressure, but through integrity. Growth will follow because growth always follows those who respect themselves enough to do what they said they would do. Chapter 2. Practice self-honesty through daily follow-through. Self-honesty is one of the rarest strengths a person can develop, and it begins with how you behave when no one is watching. People often think honesty is about telling the truth to others, but the real test happens in private moments. It happens when you say you will do something and then decide whether you follow through or walk away quietly. Growth depends on this inner honesty, because without it, progress becomes a story you tell instead of a life you live. Every day offers small moments where self-honesty is tested. The alarm rings, the task waits, the plan sits unfinished. In these moments, you either face yourself or avoid yourself. Avoidance feels easy in the moment, but it creates inner tension that builds over time. Self-honesty releases that tension. It brings clarity, it brings peace, it brings strength. Many people confuse self-honesty with self-criticism. They think being honest means being harsh. That is not true. Self-honesty is calm and direct. It simply asks one question: did I do what I said I would do? No drama, no excuses, just truth. That truth becomes the starting point for real improvement. Daily follow-through is how honesty turns into growth. Promises without action create confusion. Action without honesty creates burnout. When honesty and follow-through work together, progress becomes steady. A person who practices daily follow-through learns to trust their own judgment. That trust changes how they think and how they act. Self-honesty also requires accepting limits. Some days energy is lower, some days focus is scattered. Honest people do not pretend otherwise. They adjust without abandoning their standards. They do not quit. They adapt. Growth is not about pushing endlessly. It is about responding wisely. When a person avoids daily follow-through, they often hide it from themselves. They soften the truth. They delay reflection. They distract themselves. Over time, this habit weakens confidence. Not because of failure, but because of avoidance. Confidence grows when you face reality and act anyway. Honesty with yourself builds discipline naturally. Discipline is not force, it is clarity. When you are clear about what needs to be done, there is less mental resistance. Resistance grows when the mind argues with itself. Honesty ends that argument. Daily follow-through also sharpens focus. When you finish what you start, your attention becomes stronger. You stop jumping from one idea to another. You begin to value completion. Completion builds pride. Pride builds momentum. Many people wait for external accountability to stay consistent. True growth happens when accountability becomes internal. When you know you will check in with yourself at the end of the day, behavior changes. Choices become intentional. Time is used with purpose. Self-honesty is also about acknowledging effort, not just results. Some days progress will be slow. Honest people recognize effort, even when outcomes are small. This keeps motivation healthy. It prevents discouragement. Growth continues because the process is respected. When you practice daily follow-through, you stop bargaining with yourself. You stop adjusting standards to match comfort. You decide once and act. This simplifies life. Simplicity reduces stress. Reduced stress improves performance. Honesty with yourself builds emotional stability. You are no longer surprised by your own behavior. You know what to expect because you follow through. This predictability creates inner calm. Calm supports better decisions. Daily follow-through also strengthens patience. You learn to work without immediate rewards. You become comfortable with delayed progress. This patience is essential for long-term success. Short-term thinking limits growth. Long-term thinking expands it. Self-honesty requires courage because it removes excuses. Excuses protect comfort but block growth. Honest people accept responsibility without blaming circumstances. This responsibility brings power. Power comes from knowing you can influence your own outcomes. When honesty guides daily actions, self-respect grows quietly. You begin to stand differently, speak differently, think differently. This shift is subtle but powerful. Others may notice it before you do. Daily follow-through also improves self-communication. The mind becomes a partner instead of an enemy. Instructions become clear. Decisions become easier. Doubt loses its grip because action replaces overthinking. Growth often stalls because people lie gently to themselves. They say tomorrow will be better without changing today. Self-honesty interrupts this cycle. It brings attention back to the present. Growth happens now, not later. Practicing self-honesty also means reviewing your day without judgment. Ask what worked and what did not. Adjust without punishment. Improvement thrives in a supportive environment. You create that environment through honesty. Follow-through also teaches restraint. You stop overcommitting. You choose fewer goals and pursue them fully. This focus increases effectiveness. Energy is no longer scattered. When daily follow-through becomes a habit, confidence becomes stable. It is not dependent on praise or results. It comes from reliability. Reliable people trust themselves. That trust fuels ambition. Self-honesty also reveals patterns. You notice where you avoid effort and where you excel. This awareness allows smarter planning. Growth accelerates when strategy matches reality. Honest follow-through builds integrity. Integrity is not just moral behavior. It is alignment between intention and action. This alignment creates strength. Strength supports resilience. Resilience grows when you face missed commitments honestly. Instead of hiding, you reset quickly. Recovery becomes faster. Progress continues. Daily follow-through also deepens self-awareness. You understand your triggers, distractions, and strengths. This understanding improves control. Control improves outcomes. When honesty becomes part of daily life, growth becomes natural. You stop forcing change. Change happens because behavior supports it. Self-honesty also improves emotional health. You stop carrying guilt from unfinished tasks. You release mental clutter. Mental clarity improves focus and creativity. Follow-through builds identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who acts. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior shapes destiny. Growth is not built on perfection. It is built on truth and effort. Truth guides direction. Effort moves you forward. Daily follow-through also strengthens patience with others. When you manage yourself well, relationships improve. You listen better, respond better, communicate better. Honesty creates momentum because it removes confusion. Clear minds act decisively. Decisive action produces results. Growth requires confronting discomfort daily. Honesty makes discomfort manageable. You know why you are doing the work. Purpose reduces resistance. Follow-through also increases self-respect. You stop disappointing yourself. Pride replaces regret. Self-honesty teaches accountability. You own your choices. Ownership builds maturity. Maturity supports leadership. Daily follow-through also improves confidence in decision-making. You stop second-guessing because you trust execution. Growth becomes sustainable when honesty and action work together. Burnout decreases. Satisfaction increases. Self-honesty also helps you set realistic goals. You stop chasing fantasy timelines. Progress becomes measurable. Daily follow-through strengthens focus during difficulty. You continue despite challenges. Persistence builds resilience. Honesty builds inner stability. Stability supports growth during uncertainty. Follow-through also improves time management. You value commitments. Time is treated with respect. Self-honesty keeps growth grounded. You remain aware of where you are while moving forward. Daily follow-through transforms intention into reality. Reality builds belief. Belief fuels consistency. Consistency builds success. Practice honesty daily. Act on what you decide. Growth will follow because growth always follows truth backed by action. Chapter 3. Build inner trust by keeping commitments. When a person says they want to change their life, what they're really saying is they want to trust themselves again. You can't build anything strong in your life, not relationships, not work, not health, until you rebuild that internal trust. Inner trust is the belief that when you say something, you mean it, and when you mean it, you do it. But for many people that belief has been worn down, not because they're weak, not because they're lazy, but because they've let too many personal commitments slide. The small ones, the quiet ones, the ones no one else sees, but you do. And it adds up. Inner trust isn't about doing big impressive things. It's about doing the simple things you promised yourself. Waking up when you said you would. Finishing what you started. Showing up when no one reminds you. Making the call you've been avoiding. You begin to believe in yourself again. Not when things are perfect, but when you follow through. Keeping commitments to yourself sends a clear message to your mind. You are someone who can be counted on. That's how confidence grows. Not from talking, but from acting. Every time you say, "I'll start tomorrow," and don't, you weaken the link between your words and your actions. It seems harmless, but it isn't. Over time, your mind stops believing your own voice. That's when you feel disconnected from yourself. You stop setting goals because you don't believe you'll follow through. You settle for less, not because it's what you want, but because it feels safer than another disappointment. Rebuilding trust starts by doing exactly what you say, not once but every single day. This doesn't mean you need to do everything perfectly. It means you need to be honest about what you're capable of, and then commit to that. It's better to follow through on one clear goal than to break 10 unrealistic ones. People break trust with themselves because they overpromise and underdeliver again and again. The fix isn't to stop aiming high. It's to align your commitments with your current level of discipline, and then slowly raise that bar step by step. There's something powerful that happens when you complete even the smallest task you told yourself you would do. You feel steady. You feel calm. You don't need praise from others, because you have proof from within. You start to carry yourself differently. You speak with more certainty. You stop doubting your own judgment. You stop asking for so many opinions. That's not arrogance. That's the quiet confidence that comes from doing what you said you would do. A lot of people focus on keeping their word to others, and that's important. But the way you treat your own word is what sets the tone for everything else. If you constantly break promises to yourself, even the ones no one knows about, then your words start to lose their meaning. You start saying things without weight, without belief. That creates anxiety, because deep down you know you're not aligned with your own value. Inner trust is built in private moments, when you choose to do what you said, not for attention, not for approval, but for your own growth. And here's the truth, it's uncomfortable. Keeping commitments to yourself means doing things you don't feel like doing. It means pushing through resistance. It means setting boundaries with your emotions. But the discomfort doesn't last. What lasts is the strength you build on the other side of it. You don't need a perfect plan to rebuild trust. You just need one decision that you stick to, and then another. You begin with something simple, something small. Maybe it's writing for 10 minutes a day. Maybe it's turning your phone off at a certain time. Maybe it's drinking water before coffee. It sounds too easy, but it works. The point is not how big the commitment is. The point is that you keep it. That's what starts to shift everything. When you do this consistently, you stop feeling like a victim of your life. You stop blaming outside things for what's not working, because you've taken control of the one thing that always matters, your choice. You see, when you trust yourself, your environment loses its power over you. The excuses don't stick anymore. The delays don't carry the same weight. You begin to lead yourself, and that kind of personal leadership affects every area of your life. Keeping commitments also makes your goals feel more real. When you trust yourself, you stop dreaming vaguely. You set deadlines. You take action. You stop waiting for the right mood or the perfect moment. You create momentum through movement, not through motivation. And as you build this habit, your life starts to feel more aligned. You no longer feel like you're betraying your own potential. The truth is, if you can't keep the small promises, you'll never keep the big ones. Big goals are built on small discipline. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. It's not about doing something once. It's about doing it until it's who you are. And the only way to get there is by building that trust day after day, quietly, privately, without shortcuts. And let's not forget, life gets hard. There will be days you want to quit, days when you feel tired, uninspired, or overwhelmed. That's when inner trust matters most, because when things fall apart around you, the only thing that keeps you grounded is your ability to rely on yourself. If you've built that habit over time, you'll keep going. Not because it's easy, but because it's who you've become. The people who make progress aren't always the smartest or most talented. They're the ones who keep showing up, who keep their word, who hold themselves to a standard, whether anyone is watching or not. You don't need to be perfect to grow. You need to be consistent. You need to treat your own word like it means something. Every time you say I'll do it, and then follow through, you rewrite the way you see yourself. You stop feeling stuck. You stop second-guessing. You start building a self-image rooted in reliability. And that matters more than any plan or goal you write down, because you're not just working on your habits. You're shaping your identity. So start with one commitment today. Make it small, make it clear, and then keep it. Not because someone's watching, not because it's easy, but because that's the kind of person you're choosing to become. And once you do that, once you start showing up for yourself consistently, the life you want is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you grow into, step by step, decision by decision, one kept promise at a time. Chapter 4. Strengthen discipline by honoring personal promises. Discipline is not something you're born with, it's something you build. And you don't build it by reading about it or by waiting for the right mood. You build discipline by honoring your personal promises, the ones you make when no one's around. That's where it starts. Not in public, not in front of a crowd, but in the quiet moments when you say you're going to do something, and then you do it. That's where real strength is born. Not the kind that impresses others, but the kind that transforms your life from the inside out. Most people struggle with discipline because they treat it like a mood. If they feel focused, they act. If they don't, they wait. But discipline has nothing to do with feelings. It has everything to do with your word. And when your word becomes something you follow regardless of how you feel, that's when you take control of your future. Personal promises are the start of this. They're not for show. They're not for likes or praise. They're the quiet agreements you make with yourself to live with intention. To stop drifting. To stop drifting. To stop delaying. These promises could be as simple as waking up when you planned, finishing a task you said you would complete, avoiding distractions you said you'd cut out, or committing to a new habit. What matters most isn't how big the promise is, it's whether or not you follow through. Every time you break a personal promise, even a small one, you chip away at your own belief in yourself. You might think it doesn't matter, that no one noticed, that you'll get back on track tomorrow, but your brain remembers. Your body remembers. Your future remembers. And the more often you ignore your word, the harder it becomes to trust it. That's why building discipline starts with one thing: doing exactly what you said you would do. When you honor your personal promises, you create structure. That structure becomes a foundation you can rely on when motivation disappears. And it will. It's easy to take action when everything feels right. But those moments are rare. The majority of growth comes from days when you don't feel like it. And that's where discipline steps in. Discipline takes over when motivation checks out. It becomes the bridge between your intentions and your action. That bridge only stands strong when it's built on promises you've proven you can keep. So, how do you start building this? You begin with clarity. Vague promises don't work. I'll try to be better, or I'll get more serious means nothing. Be exact. Set specific standards. Not because you're trying to be perfect, but because you're trying to be accountable. Say to yourself, I will walk for 20 minutes today. I will write 200 words today. Or I will avoid social media after 8 p.m. That clarity gives you a target, and when you hit that target even once, you gain proof. Proof that you are capable. Proof that you are someone who does what they say. Discipline feeds on that kind of proof. It grows stronger with repetition. Not loud efforts, but consistent ones. Every time you show up for your promise, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, you make discipline a little more natural. It becomes part of you eventually. It feels wrong not to follow through. That's when you've shifted from relying on willpower to operating with identity. You're no longer trying to be disciplined, you're just being who you are. But don't misunderstand, discipline doesn't mean perfection. It means persistence. You will have off days. You will make mistakes. The key is how fast you recover. A disciplined person doesn't allow one broken promise to turn into a streak of neglect. They stop, reflect, recenter, and they return to their standard. That ability to bounce back quickly is just as important as follow-through itself. Discipline isn't about being flawless, it's about being dependable, especially to yourself. There's also something freeing about being disciplined. People often think of discipline as restriction, but it's the opposite. When you have the discipline to follow through on your goals, you free yourself from regret, from overthinking, from the endless loop of starting and stopping. You wake up with direction. You go to bed with clarity. That sense of control is not about being rigid. It's about knowing that you're not wasting your potential. Honoring personal promises also changes the way you see time. You stop saying, "I'll do it later," because you know that later becomes never. You stop living in delay because you've learned that discipline lives in the now. It doesn't need the perfect moment, it only needs the next decision. And when you begin to keep more of those small promises, something else happens. You stop relying on other people to push you. You stop needing external accountability. You become your own coach, your own motivator. That kind of independence is powerful. It builds a deep level of self-respect that no one can take from you. The more disciplined you are, the more consistent your results become. That's not a coincidence, it's cause and effect. Consistency comes from daily actions, not occasional bursts. And those daily actions come from your personal promises, kept or broken. There's no mystery to it. The people who get better are the ones who kept going when it was boring, when it was slow, when no one cared. That's what discipline looks like. That's what honoring your word looks like. You won't always feel like it. That's not the goal. The goal is to act anyway. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what you committed. And every time you answer that question with action, you strengthen your mind. You show it that your feelings don't run the show. Your values do. And over time, that level of discipline spills into every part of your life. Your relationships, your career, your health, your minds. Because if you can keep promises to yourself, you naturally become better at keeping them with others. You stop avoiding hard conversations. You start sticking to plans. You become reliable, not just in your intentions, but in your behavior. People respect disciplined people, not because they're perfect, but because they're consistent. And most importantly, they respect themselves. That self-respect doesn't come from what you say. It comes from what you do, and whether or not it matches what you said you'd do. So if you want to strengthen your discipline, you don't need more motivation. You need more honesty with your own word. You need to take that word seriously, even if no one else hears it. You need to stop brushing off your own standards like they don't matter. They do. They're everything. Your life won't change from one big decision. It will change from 1,000 small promises honored daily. Some days will be harder than others. Some days you'll feel like quitting. But those are the days that matter most, because that's when you prove to yourself that your discipline is real. Not because you feel like it, but because you follow through. Discipline is the path to freedom. It's the quiet strength that shapes your future without needing to shout. It's built, not gifted. Earned, not inherited. Strengthen it one promise at a time, and watch what happens to your life. Chapter 5. Develop confidence from finishing what you start. Confidence doesn't come from compliments or applause. It doesn't come from reading quotes or waiting for someone to tell you you're good enough. Real confidence is built in the moments when you finish what you start. It comes from knowing you didn't quit on yourself. It comes from completing things, even small things, and proving to your own mind that you're capable, focused, and reliable. When you finish something you once delayed or avoided, your mind changes how it sees you. You start to believe in yourself, not because someone else said so, but because you earned it. Most people struggle with confidence because they keep abandoning their own plans. They get excited at the beginning, they imagine the result, they talk about it, but they don't follow through. Over time, this creates a pattern. You begin something, lose interest, and move on to something else. At first it feels normal, but eventually it turns into frustration. Not because you didn't have good ideas, but because you didn't stay long enough to see them grow. And the more times you walk away halfway, the more disconnected you feel from your goals. Finishing matters. It's not just about completion for the sake of checking a box. It's about sending a message to yourself that you don't quit, that when you say you're going to do something, you mean it, that you're not just chasing feelings, you're developing follow-through. When you finish something hard, your brain stores that as proof. It becomes a memory you can lean on when self-doubt shows up. You can say, "I've done it before, I can do it again." That's not fake confidence, that's earned. Confidence is a relationship with your own ability to follow through. If that relationship is broken, it doesn't matter how many goals you set. They'll feel out of reach, because deep down you're unsure if you'll finish them. That's why rebuilding confidence starts with small completions. You don't need to do something huge. You just need to pick something and stick with it until it's done. Maybe it's reading a full book. Maybe it's cleaning the space you've been avoiding. Maybe it's launching a project that's been sitting in your notes for months. Whatever it is, do not walk away halfway. Push through the resistance and finish it. Starting is easy. Everyone starts. Starting feels exciting, fresh, and motivating. But finishing is where growth happens. Finishing requires patience, focus, and discomfort. That's why it's rare, and that's also why it's powerful. Because the moment you finish something you once delayed, you feel proud. You don't need to show it off, you feel it inside. It changes your posture. It changes the way you speak. It changes how you show up the next day. When you don't finish what you start, your confidence slowly erodes. You may not notice it right away, but it shows up hesitation, in overthinking, in self-doubt. You start second-guessing yourself, not because you're incapable, but because you've trained your brain to expect inconsistency. That's the danger of starting without finishing. It teaches you that your effort has no outcome. And if that belief grows, it's hard to start anything with enthusiasm. Confidence isn't built in one weekend. It's built over time, through a track record of completions. You don't need to tell anyone what you're doing. You just need to do it. And when you do it completely, all the way through, you begin to trust yourself again. Trust creates clarity, and clarity gives you strength to keep going. Sometimes people avoid finishing because they're afraid the result won't be good enough. They delay the end because they don't want to face their own standards. But confidence doesn't require perfection. It requires completion. You don't become stronger by creating flawless work. You become stronger by seeing things through, learning from the process, and showing yourself that you can do hard things. If you wait for it to feel perfect, you'll always find a reason to stop. Confidence also builds when you stop overcommitting. Don't start everything. Start less and finish more. Choose what matters and stay with it. If you spread yourself too thin, you'll feel busy, but empty. You'll touch a lot of things but complete none of them. That leads to stress, not growth. Pick something meaningful, commit to it, and do what it takes to finish, even when it's boring, even when it's difficult, even when no one is watching. One of the most important shifts happens when you realize that finishing doesn't always mean a big achievement. It might be showing up to the gym on the day you promised. It might be staying focused for the full hour you planned. It might be writing the last page of the article you started. These small completions create momentum. Momentum creates belief, and belief makes it easier to keep going. If you've built a habit of starting and stopping, it's not too late to turn it around. Start with one promise, a clear one, something you can finish in a short time, something that matters to you. Don't break it, even if it's uncomfortable, even if your mind tells you to stop. Prove to yourself that this time, you're going to follow through, not because you have to, but because you've decided that your confidence is worth more than comfort. Finishing teaches discipline. It teaches you that growth comes after resistance, that pushing through when it's hard gives you more than giving in ever will. It changes your self-image.
You stop thinking of yourself as someone who needs motivation. You begin to see yourself as someone who gets things done. When you develop that kind of confidence, you no longer need to chase validation. You stop seeking approval, because you've already given it to yourself. You've done the work. You've earned the outcome. That quiet pride is more powerful than any praise. It lasts longer. It runs deeper. If you want to believe in yourself, give yourself a reason to. Not by hoping, not by waiting, but by finishing. Do it all the way. No shortcuts, no half-hearted effort. Give it what you said you would give. That's how confidence is built, from the inside out. The next time you think about quitting halfway, pause. Ask yourself what it would feel like to see it through, to look back and know you stayed with it, to know that you didn't give up when it got tough. Let that feeling pull you forward. Let it remind you that your confidence isn't waiting for permission. It's waiting for action. Finish what you start. That's how you grow. That's how you build belief. That's how you become unstoppable.
Chapter 6. Create momentum by showing up daily. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces you can create for yourself, and it doesn't come from doing something once in a while. It doesn't come from perfect starts or bursts of energy that fade in a few days. It's built through one simple action that most people overlook: showing up every single day, not when you feel like it, not when everything is going right, every day. That consistency is what creates movement. And once movement begins, you get traction. With traction, you get results. That's how momentum starts to build. You don't need to do everything at once. In fact, trying to do too much too fast is what causes most people to burn out. Momentum doesn't demand perfection. It asks for presence. It needs you to show up, not as a version of yourself that's always energized or inspired, but as someone who is willing to keep going when it's boring, hard, or uncomfortable. Showing up daily teaches you something deeper than motivation. It teaches you discipline, and discipline is what makes progress last. The truth is, most people overestimate what they can do in a short time, and underestimate what they can accomplish through steady effort. One day of focused action might not change your life, but 100 days of showing up absolutely will. When you make a habit of being consistent, you start to create evidence. You start to see progress you can track. You build confidence that doesn't depend on outcomes alone, but on your ability to keep showing up no matter what. Daily showing up is not glamorous. It won't always feel exciting. You'll have days where you're tired, where your mind makes excuses, where it would be easier to skip. Those are the days that matter most. That's where the real shift happens, when you choose to act even when it's inconvenient. Each time you show up despite resistance, you reinforce a message to your brain that what you're doing matters, that your goals are not optional, that you take yourself seriously. You don't need to do huge things every day. Momentum builds through small wins stacked on top of each other. If you write one paragraph a day, that turns into a book. If you study for 30 minutes a day, that turns into mastery. If you train for 20 minutes a day, that turns into strength. You're not aiming to impress anyone. You're choosing progress that is sustainable. And when you show up consistently, progress becomes a part of your life, not something you chase, but something you live. What stops people from showing up isn't a lack of skill or intelligence. It's usually the belief that if they're not doing something big, it doesn't count. But that's not how growth works. Most of your progress will happen quietly. There won't be applause. There won't be instant results. But there will be change, slow, steady, and powerful. You'll start noticing it in how you speak, how you think, how you respond to challenges. The world outside won't see it at first, but inside you'll know you're building something real. Momentum isn't about speed, it's about direction. When you show up every day,
Even for a short time, you stay aligned with your goals. You avoid drifting. You avoid forgetting why you started. Even a small step forward is better than a day lost to hesitation. The longer you stay still, the harder it becomes to start again. But when you stay in motion, even just a little, you keep your momentum alive. That's what gives you an edge. Not talent, not luck, but consistency. Some days, showing up will mean doing your best work. Other days it'll mean barely getting through. But both days count, because you didn't disappear. You didn't walk away. You chose to be present. That's the foundation of resilience. It's how you train your mind to keep going without needing constant motivation. And the more often you do this, the more natural it becomes. It turns into part of your identity. You stop trying to be consistent and start being consistent because it's who you are. You'll also notice that when you show up daily, you get better. Practice improves performance. It sharpens your focus. It helps you learn faster. You begin to refine your process. You waste less time. You make smarter decisions, not because you're pushing harder, but because you've allowed growth to happen through repetition. The people who succeed are not always the ones who start the strongest. They're the ones who stay with it long enough to let their efforts compound. You don't have to feel confident before you act. Action creates confidence. The more you show up, the more capable you feel. You stop questioning if you're ready. You stop waiting for the perfect plan. You realize that clarity comes from movement, not from overthinking. This is where momentum truly starts to shape your life. You start taking responsibility for your results. You stop blaming circumstances. You stop postponing progress. You begin to act like the person you want to become, now, not later. There will be distractions. There will be noise. But when you've committed to showing up daily, those distractions lose their power. You begin to protect your time. You say no to things that don't align with your values. You become more intentional. Not perfect, not rigid, just consistent. And that consistency brings results faster than intensity ever could. Don't worry about doing more. Worry about doing what matters, and doing it often. Build a rhythm. Build a system. Set a time in your day where you show up for your goals, no matter how you feel. Make it non-negotiable. If it's 5 minutes, let it be 5 minutes. If it's an hour, stay committed. What matters is the pattern. What matters is that you're no longer starting and stopping based on feelings. You're moving based on purpose. People underestimate how fast they can change when they stop quitting. Every time you start over, you lose time, energy and belief. But when you stay with it, when you return daily, even during setbacks, you keep the thread alive. You're not building perfection, you're building momentum. And that momentum becomes something you can feel. You wake up clearer, you move with more intention. You stop chasing quick fixes. You start thinking long term. There's something deeply empowering about being someone who shows up, not because of pressure, not because of fear, but because of choice. Because you've decided that your growth matters, and you're willing to prove it every single day, through action. That choice adds up. It shapes your mind. It shapes your future. It puts you in control. If you've spent too long waiting for motivation, now is the time to shift. Replace waiting with action. Replace overthinking with effort. Replace hesitation with commitment. Choose to show up today, and then again tomorrow, and then again the next day. That's the path. That's the way forward. Nothing complex. Just steady, meaningful movement in the direction that matters to you. Momentum doesn't ask for huge sacrifices. It doesn't need perfect routines. It simply needs you to be present every single day, even in a small way. Do that long enough and you'll be amazed at what you're able to build. Not because you rushed, but because you stayed, because you cared, because you showed up when it was easier not to. That's what creates change. That's what builds a life you can be proud of.
Chapter 7. Reduce self-doubt by doing agreed actions. Self-doubt doesn't begin with failure. It begins when you say you're going to do something and then don't follow through. At first it seems small. You tell yourself you'll try again tomorrow, that life got in the way, that you'll catch up. But when this becomes a pattern, when day after day the actions you promised yourself don't happen, your belief in yourself begins to weaken. You start questioning if you're really capable. You hesitate. You second-guess simple decisions, not because you're not talented or smart, but because your inner voice has lost trust in your follow-through. The mind pays attention to behavior more than intentions. You can talk to yourself about goals, plans, and dreams all day long, but if your actions don't line up with those words, your self-respect slowly declines. The most reliable way to reduce self-doubt is to start doing what you said you would do. Not in huge leaps. Not with dramatic change, just in small, clear, agreed actions, the ones you know matter but often avoid. These are the actions that rebuild trusts, strengthen confidence, and silence the voice that says, maybe I'm not good enough. You don't need to feel brave to get started. You just need to move. When you do what you said you would do, you send a message to your brain that you're in control. That you are not waiting for motivation, that you can depend on yourself. This kind of self-respect isn't found in books or advice. It's built through action. Every time you honor an agreement you made with yourself, you chip away at doubt. You begin to shift from I hope I can to I know I will. Self-doubt loves hesitation. It thrives in places where action is missing. The longer you wait to begin, the louder the doubt becomes. That's why even a small step matters. When you take action, you cut off the cycle of overthinking. You stop analyzing your fear and start creating momentum. You don't need to believe fully in yourself at first. That belief grows through repeated effort. Confidence isn't something you wait for. It's something you build by doing. One reason doubt stays strong is because many people make vague promises. I'll work on myself. I'll be better. I'll get serious. But the mind doesn't respond to vague ideas. It needs specifics. Clarity gives you a target, and when you act on a specific target, write for 20 minutes, go to the gym for 30, clean the room you've been avoiding, you begin to build a track record. This track record is what builds quiet confidence. You stop needing proof from the outside. You've collected it from your own behavior. Doing agreed actions is more than just checking off tasks. It's about aligning with who you say you want to become. If you say you value growth, but avoid the steps that lead there, you create internal conflict. That conflict shows up as stress, anxiety, and indecision. But when your actions match your values, you feel calm, you feel steady, you feel certain, even if the road ahead is still difficult. That sense of alignment is powerful. It grounds you. It keeps you clear. Start small. Make an agreement that you can absolutely complete. Don't let your ego convince you that it has to be big to count. Small promises are the foundation of big change. If you can't keep a 5-minute commitment, you won't keep a 5-hour one. If you can't finish something simple, finishing something complex becomes impossible. Build integrity with the basics. When you do, your mind starts to believe you again, and belief is what removes hesitation. Sometimes the hardest part is simply beginning. You sit there thinking about it, arguing with yourself, listing all the reasons why now isn't the right time. But if you've ever pushed past that voice, you know something changes. Once you begin, the resistance loses its grip. Taking action gives you back your power, and when you follow through, even once, you feel it. The doubt begins to fade, not all at once,
but enough for you to keep going. Over time, if you keep doing what you said you would do, your self-talk begins to shift. You stop calling yourself lazy, unmotivated, or inconsistent. You start seeing yourself as someone who gets things done, someone who finishes, someone who follows through. You can't fake that kind of mindset. You earn it. And once you have it, you carry it with you everywhere. This kind of consistency changes more than your mood. It changes your identity. You begin to approach life differently. You stop needing external reminders or accountability. You stop chasing quick fixes. You show up because that's what you do now. You follow through because it's part of who you are. That internal shift gives you a kind of strength that doesn't go away easily. And even when things don't go as planned, when the result isn't perfect, when you make a mistake, your confidence doesn't collapse. Why? Because your belief isn't built on outcomes anymore. It's built on effort, on the simple truth that you did what you said you would do, that you kept your word to yourself. That's a kind of power that no failure can take from you. Of course, there will be moments when you slip, times when you miss a step or avoid an action. That's normal. What matters is how quickly you return. Doubt grows when one missed promise turns into a pattern. So don't let it. When you miss a day, return the next. When you break an agreement, acknowledge it and start again. The faster you return, the stronger you become. Resilience is not avoiding mistakes. It's correcting them without delay. You can live with mistakes. You can grow from failure. But it's very hard to grow when you're constantly avoiding the actions that would move your life forward. That's why agreed actions matter so much. They're your roadmap back to trust, back to strength, back to clarity. Every time you act on a decision you made with intention, you take back control from doubt. You move from fear to power. You don't need to do everything today, but you do need to do something. Pick one action you've been avoiding and do it. Not for a reward, not for praise, just because it's what you agreed on, just because that's the kind of person you're becoming. And if you do that again tomorrow and the next day, everything starts to change. Not through pressure, not through force, but through steady, meaningful action. Self-doubt will visit from time to time. That's part of being human. But it doesn't have to lead. It doesn't have to decide for you. The more you follow through on your own commitments, the quieter that doubt becomes. You don't have to argue with it. You just need to prove it wrong through action. That's the most direct and lasting way to build belief in yourself. When you do the work you said you would do, you stop relying on hope. You move into clarity, into focus, into ownership. That's how you create a life that feels solid from the inside out. Not by trying to be confident, but by doing what confidence is built on. One action at a time, one promise honored at a time, one decision followed through. Again and again until you no longer wonder if you can trust yourself. You know you can, because you've proven it.
Chapter 8. Anchor identity and consistent personal follow-through. Identity isn't built by what you say you are, it's shaped by what you do repeatedly. You can tell yourself you're disciplined, focused, responsible, but if your actions don't support those words, you'll feel disconnected from that image. True identity grows through consistent follow-through, the steady, daily decision to do what you said you would do. Over time, this becomes more than a habit. It becomes part of who you are. You don't have to force it. You don't have to talk yourself into it. You do it because it feels right, because it matches your core. Everyone wants to feel aligned with the best version of themselves, but most people try to create that feeling through short bursts of action or external motivation. That's not sustainable. What gives you real stability is consistency. When you follow through on your personal standards day after day, you begin to see yourself differently. You're not pretending to be reliable. You are reliable. You're not acting confident. You've earned that confidence through action. There's no guesswork. You've proven it to yourself through repetition.
When you avoid the actions you committed to, even in small ways, your identity starts to feel unstable. It's not because you failed, it's because you acted out of alignment with your own standards. That creates friction. You feel frustrated, but you're not sure why. It's not always about the outcome. It's about the disconnect between who you want to be and what you're actually doing. Follow through closes that gap. It makes you feel whole. You don't need to wait until you feel ready to start living with consistency. That's the mistake people make. They want clarity first. They want to feel perfect before they begin. But identity isn't something you wait for, it's something you anchor through repeated behavior. Every time you complete a task you promised yourself, no matter how small, you reinforce that anchor. You're not just building discipline, you're reinforcing your identity. Think of it like this: every action you take either strengthens or weakens the image you hold of yourself. If you want to be someone who follows through, you need evidence. That evidence isn't built in a single weekend of hard work, it's built through showing up even when you don't want to. Following through when it's uncomfortable. Completing what you started, even when no one's checking in. That's the kind of consistency that shifts your self-image permanently. When your identity is grounded in follow-through, you don't need to rely on emotion to guide your choices. You stop asking yourself how you feel about doing the thing. You just do it. It's part of your rhythm now. That doesn't mean you don't struggle. It means you've created a structure strong enough to carry you through those moments of doubt, distraction, or discomfort. And every time you get through one of those moments, your trust in yourself grows even more. It's not about forcing yourself every day. It's about creating a standard you actually respect. If the actions you're trying to follow through on feel fake or forced, you'll quit. But if your promises come from a clear, honest place, the kind of goals that really matter to you, then follow through becomes meaningful. It becomes part of your purpose, not just another task on your list. Your identity is shaped more by your quiet choices than your big achievement. The decision to stick to your reading time, to finish your workout, to plan your day the way you said you would, those are the moments that form the core of your character. You may not get applause for them. You may not even see instant results, but they build something strong and lasting inside you. Eventually others will see it too. They'll notice the way you carry yourself, the way you show up, the way you keep your word. But more importantly, you'll feel it in the way you think. You'll stop over-explaining. You'll stop over-promising. You'll stop trying to prove anything. Because you already know who you are, and that knowing comes from the consistent choices you've made. It's easy to get distracted by short-term emotions. Some days you'll be tired. Some days you'll want to put things off. But if you've built your identity on showing up consistently, you'll act anyway. Not out of guilt, but out of alignment. That alignment creates peace. You don't feel scattered or pulled in 100 directions. You feel centered. You feel like yourself. And when setbacks happen, because they will, you won't fall apart. Why? Because you're anchored. You're not depending on outside validation or perfect circumstances. You have a system that brings you back. You have patterns that support your progress. You know how to begin again. Not because you're trying to fix yourself, but because this is what you do now. Starting again isn't hard when you've built a track record of showing up for yourself. There's nothing complicated about it. You say what you're going to do, then you do it. You keep that loop tight. You don't let too much time pass between your decisions and your actions. That short loop builds reliability. Reliability creates strength. And that strength becomes your identity. Not something you perform, but something you live. People often say, "I don't know who I am," Or I've lost my sense of direction. And most of the time, it's because their actions haven't matched their values for too long. They've been breaking promises, shifting routines, delaying goals. That's what erodes identity. If you want to rebuild it, don't start with a big plan. Start with one decision, one agreement, one simple action that you complete fully. Then repeat. As you repeat, you'll begin to notice the way you speak changes. You'll stop saying "I'll try" and start saying "I will." You'll stop avoiding responsibility. You'll stop blaming outside factors. Your language becomes more direct because your mindset is more grounded. You're no longer pretending to be the kind of person who follows through. You are that person. This doesn't mean life gets easier, but you get clearer. You waste less time. You feel more confident even when things are uncertain. Because your confidence no longer comes from guessing, it comes from doing. You've built a history of consistency. You've proven that you can follow through, even on the hard days, and that proof changes everything. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait for the perfect plan. Anchor your identity now. Choose the kind of person you want to be, and back it up with daily action. You don't have to broadcast it. You don't have to explain it. You just have to live it. Quietly, strongly, repeatedly. Because that's what builds the kind of identity that lasts. The kind that doesn't shake under pressure. The kind that leads to a life of real growth.
Chapter 9. Replace avoidance with action you promised. Avoidance doesn't start as a major decision. It starts as a moment you tell yourself, "I'll do it later." It's subtle, quiet, and convincing. And once you say it enough, it becomes a habit. You know what needs to be done. You feel the pressure of unfinished promises. But instead of doing them, you look for distractions. You shift your attention. You justify delays. And slowly, you create a pattern that becomes normal, avoiding the very actions you once committed to. This is where progress slows down. Not because you're not capable, but because you've allowed avoidance to replace action. The reason avoidance feels powerful is because it gives you short-term relief. You delay a difficult task, and for a moment you feel lighter. You escape the discomfort. But it's a trap. That relief doesn't last. It quickly turns into guilt, self-doubt, and pressure. The task is still there. The promise is still broken. And now you carry the extra weight of knowing you didn't follow through. This cycle drains your energy. It builds tension in your mind. It makes you feel stuck, even when you know exactly what to do. That's the cost of avoidance. It doesn't just delay action, it damages your self-trust. Replacing avoidance with the action you promised is not about doing everything at once. It's about choosing to respond differently in the moment you feel resistance. That moment is where change begins. Instead of reaching for distraction, you return to your decision. You do the thing. Not because it feels easy. Not because it feels easy. Not because it feels exciting, but because you said you would. That's the shift. It's not about forcing yourself to do things. It's about honoring what you've already decided. This practice strengthens your mental clarity. The more you act on your own word, the less clutter you carry. There's no internal debate, no nagging feeling that you're falling behind. You feel clear, steady, and focused. When your actions align with your decisions, your mind relaxes. You stop spending energy managing guilt. That energy can now move toward progress. The most powerful way to break the habit of avoidance is to make the first move. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It just needs to be real. If you've been avoiding a conversation, start it. If you've been avoiding your health, take the walk. If you've been avoiding a goal, open the project and take one step. That first move is everything. It disrupts the delay. It proves to your brain that you're not stuck.
And from that one action, momentum begins. You'll never remove resistance completely, but you can remove its control over you. The more you follow through on agreed actions, the less convincing your excuses sound. Your mind begins to shift. Instead of protecting comfort, it starts protecting your word. You train yourself to associate action with freedom, because that's what it brings. Avoidance traps you in loops. Action moves you forward. The hard part isn't doing the thing. The hard part is starting the thing. Once you start, clarity increases. Your mind locks in. Time flows. That's what avoidance robs you of, that state of focus where real progress happens. But every time you choose action over avoidance, you get that state back, and you get to feel the strength of showing up for yourself. If you've built up a long list of broken promises, don't try to fix them all today. Start with one. Pick something you've been avoiding and finish it. Complete it fully. Feel the shift that happens after you do. That feeling, the release, the clarity, the quiet pride is your reward. Let that feeling be your reminder that action is always worth more than avoidance. Often, the things we avoid aren't even that difficult. We just fear the discomfort, but when you face that discomfort head on, it fades. You realize it wasn't the task that was draining you, it was the delay. Avoidance creates tension that grows over time. Action relieves it immediately. The faster you act on your promises, the more peace you create in your mind. You also begin to see that action builds character, not through big achievements, but through simple follow-through. When you replace avoidance with the actions you said you'd take, you begin to build discipline without needing pressure. It becomes natural. It becomes part of your routine. And when people ask how you stay focused, how you stay committed, the answer is simple. You stopped running from your own decisions. You don't need more willpower. You need fewer moments of delay. You need fewer internal arguments. And that comes from deciding in advance that your word matters. You made a promise, now act on it. Even if it's inconvenient. Even if you don't feel like it. That's how you take back your momentum. People who make real progress in life are not always the most gifted or lucky. They're the ones who do what they said they'd do, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. They choose the promise over the excuse, the action over the delay. They don't live in avoidance. They live in alignment. That's the difference. Replacing avoidance also helps rebuild your self-image. If you've seen yourself as inconsistent, distracted, or undisciplined, this is how you change it. You don't change how you see yourself by thinking differently. You change it by acting differently. Every time you follow through on something you've been avoiding, you send a signal to your brain. I'm not that person anymore. I finish. I show up. I keep my word. Over time, this shift becomes your new normal. You stop seeing tasks as pressure. You start seeing them as chances to prove your focus. That internal transformation makes you more grounded. You stop feeling reactive. You feel deliberate. You feel in control. Avoidance only has power when you listen to it. The voice that tells you later, or not now, is only strong when you believe it. The moment you act anyway, that voice fades. It loses its grip, and in its place comes something stronger. The voice that says, I do what I said I'd do. That voice is quiet, but it carries weight. It carries confidence. It carries truth. This doesn't mean you'll never slip. You will. But now you know how to return faster. You won't get lost in avoidance for weeks or months. You'll catch it. You'll interrupt it. You'll return to action. That's how growth becomes consistent, not from perfection, but from faster recovery. If you want to feel lighter, more focused, and more confident, this is where to begin. Replace delay with movement. Replace overthinking with doing. Replace avoidance with the action you already chose. You've already made the decision. Now back it up with action. You'll feel better. You'll move faster. You'll regain trust in yourself, and that trust is the key to everything.
Chapter 10. Choose integrity toward yourself every day. Integrity is not just about how you treat others, it's about how you treat yourself when no one is watching. It's in the quiet choices you make, the personal standards you live by, and the promises you keep when it's easy to let them slide. Choosing integrity toward yourself every day means being honest with who you are, what you want, and what you need to do, and then acting on it. It means making your values real through your behavior, not just your words. It's one of the most powerful forms of self-respect, and it's something you have to choose again and again. When you live with integrity, you stop negotiating with your excuses. You stop adjusting your standards to match your moods. You stop letting temporary feelings override long-term values. This doesn't make life easier, but it makes it clearer. It removes the noise. It keeps your attention focused on what really matters, showing up in a way that aligns with the person you're trying to become. Every day, you face choices. Some are obvious, others subtle. Wake up when you said you would, or hit snooze. Focus on your goals or get distracted again. Tell yourself the truth about your effort or sugarcoat it. These small decisions define your direction. You may not feel the effects immediately, but they stack up fast. Living without integrity toward yourself builds frustration, anxiety, and confusion. Living with it brings clarity, strength, and peace. Integrity is not about being perfect. It's about being consistent with what you know is right for you. You will have days when you fall short. You will make mistakes. But the goal isn't to avoid failure.